Welcome to the second video in our series on creating a MySQLi user registration system. This tutorial is brought to you by simpletut.com, and today we're going to be covering the login page. This is an extremely important part of the registration system because it will actually log users into your website. Now, just as a reminder, in the previous video, what we created was the initial template, our first form, and of course we also created the PHP which handles the functionality of the register page. So just to remind you what we did, we have this table in our database. Table's called user, and of course this is where we will store users' information as they register on our website. So if I just show you, if I register a new user, so let's just say John Brown, and it can be John Brown at MSN, or let's say at ntlworld.com, and password can be anything. Let's just say 123. Now let's click on register, and when we come back to our database, if we just refresh this, you can see it's inserted the user into the database. Okay, so of course the next step in this tutorial is to create the login page. Now if you remember, in the previous tutorial we created a template file which I'm going to duplicate, and this copy I'm going to rename to login.php. And if I open this up in Dreamweaver, you can see this is just a blank canvas. So what I'm going to do is actually create the form, and then we're going to write the PHP that will actually handle the creating sessions and logging users in. So I'm just going to rename this page title to login. Now just to remind you, if you are coming to this tutorial and you haven't seen our previous tutorial, then simply refer to the description of this video. We'll have links to all of the tutorials in this series, and you can click through to the tutorial that you want, or perhaps just refer to the first tutorial and follow through in chronological order. Alternatively, you can visit our channel on YouTube by clicking on our profile, and when you do, you'll see a playlist which has all of the videos in this series. So again, let's just get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to insert a form. As you can see, I've inserted the form into my right body div. Now within the form, I'm going to insert another div. Okay, if you remember, in the previous tutorial we created divs with classes, and of course classes can be applied to more than one element on a page. So I know for a fact I need 3 of these divs. The first one is going to contain a simple email field. The second one is going to contain a password field, and the final will contain a submit button. I'm going to get rid of all these form labels because I much prefer using placeholder text. So in this one I'm just going to say email, and in this one I'm going to say password. Actually no, I'm not going to say anything in this one. And here I'm going to change the value of the button to login, and I'm also going to name the button login also. I'll select these 2 fields, and I'll change the class to the T field, which is the style we created in the previous tutorial, and of course the button also. So if we save that, I can also select them and make sure that they are required, which is also important. So now you can see this is a lot quicker than our previous tutorial because we have our template. We have all of the CSS written for us. So we're literally just going to write this all and put this all together really quickly, and we can just focus on more of the PHP in these and the latter tutorials. So now let's just preview this in Explorer and see what we've actually done. So we've just got this login form. It's pretty simple. So let's go ahead now and actually write the PHP that will log users in. So I'm going to come into code view. Of course, as you know, we have to hand write this because this is all MySQLi code. Now if we look at this in the previous tutorial, again we read out our connection, and again we're storing that in a variable called con, stands for connection. So it's just MySQL connect, etc. Now we have required that page, our connections file, in already on the page, which is extremely important because we're going to be using this later on in the code. Okay, so we need to use PHP and MySQLi to actually connect with the database, check it, find the user. If they exist, we need to log them in. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to create the opening and closing PHP tags. And what we have to remember is that we don't want to just run this code for no reason. So we don't need to, so basically we only want to run this code if the user submits the login form. So basically to run that check, we're going to put it in an if statement. So I'm just going to write out the if statement. And what we're going to use is if is set, okay? And what we're basically checking is that the form button has been submitted, okay? And we called that login, I believe. So we can just check, yeah, login. And remember, this is all case sensitive. So now that we have that, we can actually start to write the code that's going to grab hold of the data. Well, what we need to do is we need to grab hold of the data submitted in the form and turn them into variables we can call later on in the script. Now the first variable we need to create is the variable for the email that the user enters, and the second variable we need is the password variable, and we need to get that from the two fields. So the first one is coming from the email fields, and the second is coming from the password text field. Okay, so what we've done is we've checked if the form has been submitted. If it is, it's running this code, and the first is we're creating variables, and we're inserting the values from the two text fields into the variables, which we're going to call later. So now what we need to do is actually write the SQL that's going to check if the email and password matches, and there is a count for the user. So we're going to insert that into a variable called results, and that's going to equal. And what we're going to say is, if you remember in the connections file, we created this variable, MySQLi connect, which is con, stands for connection. We're going to call that now. So we're just going to say con, and that is going to, and then we're going to write our query. And this query is pretty simple. We're just going to say select from user, which is our table, and we're going to say where email equals the variable we created, which is which contains the email from the form that has been submitted, and then we're going to say and password equals our variable for password. So just to explain this, if we look at our table here, you can see we have a password column and an email column, and this is the users table. So now if we look at our query, we're selecting it from the user table, where the email column matches the email variable, which contains the email submitted in the form, and the password column matches the password variable, which contains the value from the password text field from the form. So now that we've run our query, we need to grab hold of the data that is actually found. So what we want to do is we want to say row, create a new variable called row, and that is going to equal the variable we just created for result, which contains our query. And then what we're going to do is we're going to fetch that data, and we're going to just say MySQLi underscore both for numerical. And now what we want to do is we just want to grab hold of that data as we have, and we want to say session underscore start. And when we do that, okay, so now that we've done that, we need to actually create the sessions. So I'm just going to create the first session, which is going to be called user ID. And basically, we're going to insert the value into the session from the data we fetched here. So it's coming from row, and it's basically user ID column from the database table. And that's pretty much it. The only other thing that we want to do is redirect them to their account page. So I'm just going to say header, and then here we're going to say location, and you can redirect them to pretty much wherever you want. So I'm just going to say account.php, and you can change this to whatever you want at a later date. Add in that semicolon, and that's pretty much it. So what we're doing is we're just checking and running this code only if the login form has been submitted. We're storing the data from the form in variables we can use in our query. We're then using our connection variable and running the query, which is just basically checking that the user exists. And then we're fetching that data, and we're storing it in a session so that we know the user is logged in and we know what user it is. And then basically we're redirecting them to their account page. So let's just check. Now, before we can actually do that, we're redirecting them to a page that doesn't actually exist just yet. So I'm just going to duplicate the template page, and I'm going to create the page account.php. I spelled that with a capital A. So I'm just going to do that. And if I open up the account page, and what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to say your account, and what I'll do is just underneath this, just to actually prove that it has worked, I'm going to create some PHP, and I'm just going to echo I'm going to echo the session that we have created. So the session is called user ID. Save that. Now let's return to our login page and just launch this in a web browser. So you can see this is the form we have. Now if we check our database here, you can see we've got an account here, or we've got two. The first one is called the email is ashley@msn.com. The password's 123. Now let's just remember this. This is their user ID is 9. So let's come back here, put in the email. The password's 123. It should, when I click this, take us to our account page, and it should also display the user ID of 9 because that's the user that's logged in. So now let's click on login, and fatal error on line 11. One mistake. Okay, it should be fetch array. Okay, so that's my bad. Let's come back here. Let's just refresh that. Put that again. 1, 2, 3. Login. 17. Sorry about this. So header. Simple spelling mistake there. Sorry about that. Okay, so hopefully, okay, sorry about that. So let's just, okay, so sorry I got that, a few errors in the code, but all should work now. Log in, and there you go. Okay, now we are getting an error on this page, but I actually know why that is. I'm gonna come back here, and I'm just gonna, sometimes in PHP it forgets a session, so I'm just gonna say session start. Now if I come back to the code, you can see it says 9. So we know this is working, and we know it's that we're logged in. Okay, so what we have done so far is we've actually created the login functionality, and we're directing them to their account page, where you can post all of your links to your restricted content or your restricted content itself. Now the problem is that at the moment, although we are logging users in, we have the login functionality, we have the register functionality, this page is still accessible to anyone, even if they are not logged in. And we need to change that, otherwise what's the point of a registration system? So how do we actually check if a user is logged in and that they have the sufficient access to view the page? Well, it's very simple. We do it via our login page and the session variable that we actually created when they log in. We create a session called user ID that contains the ID of the user that's logged in. So what we need to do is on our account page, we need to come into code, and as you can see, we have this code at the very top which says session start, which is very important because without this, sometimes in PHP it can forget, it can kind of lose track of sessions, it can kind of overlook them, which created the error that we saw earlier when we didn't have this here. So it's a very important part of the code. But what we need to do is, first of all, we need this to actually remind the browser to check for the sessions and see them. And then what we need to do is we need to use a simple if statement, which is basically if is set, and in here we need to check for the session variable that is created upon logging in, which contains the user ID. And this way we know that the only way this session exists is if this user is actually logged in. Now the problem is, if you say if is set, of course what we want to do is we want to redirect them to log in if they are not logged in. So what we need to do is we need to say else, and if else, our else statement is basically just going to be header and we need to say location, and we're going to redirect them to login.php. So what this basically means is, if this is set, we don't want to do anything because the user is logged in. However, else, if the user is not logged in, then we need to redirect them to login, and we cannot load this page. So this part of the code is extremely important and must be at the very top of the page. We don't want to be, down in the middle of the page or lower, because this is the first thing that should happen on the page. This is the first check that needs to happen on the page before it loads. So let's save this and actually run the check. So let's launch this in Explorer. Now, as you can see, although I launched the account page, it has directed me to the login page because I'm not logged in. Now, if you remember from our database, we have 2 users already registered, and the first one and the email of the account is actually at MSN, password is 123. So let's log in, and you can see it redirects me to the account, and as we programmed previously, it's showing me the ID of 9, which is correct for the user that's logged in, so we know it's working. And I can see the account page because I am logged in. But what about logging users out? Because obviously it's a security risk for people if they can't log out, because of course it might be okay if the user is at home or in a secure environment, but what if they're logging into your website from an unsecure environment, maybe a public computer? Well, they need to be able to log out, otherwise anyone that uses that computer will be able to access their account until the session is deleted in some way or another. So to do that, we need to create a logout page. So I'm actually going to expand this, and again I'm going to duplicate my template file, and I'm going to call this file logout.php. And if I open this up, this is again very simple. I'm just going to change and some text, just to say you have logged out. And basically, to log the user out, all we need to do is delete the session variables that we created when the user logged in, and the session variables that is being checked every time a page that is has restricted access that is checking exists. So to actually do that is very simple. All we need to do is basically unset those sessions. So the first thing we need to do, again, we need to say session start to actually pull up the sessions, and then what we need to say is unset. What we need to unset is the session variable that we previously created, which is the user ID. And then finally, we need to say session underscore destroy. And this will completely delete the session variable. So to kind of just explain this is how the process works. If we come to login, we are running the queries to find the user, and then we're storing the set in a session variable the user ID, and we're redirecting them to an account page. Now we can basically add on our account page this code, which basically checks that the user is logged in. We can add this at the very top of any page you want to restrict access to, and this will check that the user is logged in, and if they're not logged in, they will not be able to view the page. But what about logging users out? Well, it's just as simple. Just as here, when we're checking that users are logged in, we're checking for the user ID that it exists. Well, here we are basically, whenever this page loads, it's at the very top of the page, we are destroying the session variable user ID, so it no longer exists, so that when they return to a page with restricted access, they won't have this session variable, so they'll be redirected to log in again. So let me show you. If I come and launch this in Firefox, you can see it's loaded. It says I've logged out. Now if I come back to the account page and I refresh it, remember I was logged in, I'm taken back immediately to log in because I no longer have access. So it's very simple and easy to use and understand. And that about sums it up. So in this tutorial, what we've done is we have continued as a continuation from our first tutorial, where we actually created the initial template and the first form, or register form, and I showed you how to store and register users' information in a database. We then created the login page, we built the form, and we used PHP to handle the form data, check via a query that the account exists and the information matches, and then we fetched that data and we stored a user ID in a session variable so that they're logged in. We redirected them to their account page, which is where you can post your links to restricted content or your content itself. And basically we're running a simple check to make sure that they're logged in, and if they're not, they're simply redirected to log in, and if they are logged in, they continue to view the page. And then of course, very importantly, we created a logout page which will destroy the session that is used to check and restrict access. So that's the end of this tutorial, and the second video in the series of a MySQLi user registration system. And the next video in our series will be on the update page and updating the user's information for different accounts. That will be the next video in this series. So once again, thanks very much for watching, and there will be links in the description of this video, and on our channel we'll have a complete playlist for this entire series. So if you are looking to follow along with the next video in this series, please refer to either the description for direct links or our channel. Thank you very much for following along with this video tutorial. I'd just like to take this opportunity to encourage you to visit our official social network, simpletut.com. There'll be a link in the description of this video, and this is where we post all of our tutorials, and including the series on the MySQLi registration system. Here we have a huge learning resource for you where you can learn new things in building all different types of website applications, including file upload, registration systems, MySQLi tutorials, PHP classes, various different things, from building content management systems to various different kinds of e-commerce tutorials. Now, if you do have a question on this or any other of our tutorials, or perhaps even a question about a project you're doing yourself, then we do have an Ask a Question area on our site where you can post your question, and a member of our team, or perhaps even another user, will get back to you with support. We also have a freebies section and a blog where you can access other kinds of important and easy to use resources. And of course, if you are a fan of our project, then we do have a donate button on the site if you would like to contribute to our project. Of course, it is your support that enables us to continue bringing the free resources and content that you like. You can also access our Facebook page on our official website, and there'll be a link in the description of this video where you can like our page. We've reached over 2,000 likes and we continue to grow. But here, if you like our page, of course, we will keep you updated on a regular basis as new tutorials come out, new resources, freebies, and various things like that. As they become available, you will be one of the first to know. And of course, I'd also like to reference something we incorporated into this tutorial, but it really is a fantastic resource for you. But CSS Menu Creator, there'll be a link in the description of this video. You can literally use this to build your menus. So it's an incredibly powerful tool and something you can incorporate into your own projects to save you time. It's a massive time saver. But of course, if you are looking for an easy solution to get online quickly, then please visit our official website, which is siteeasy.com. Again, there'll be a link in the description of this video, and here we offer a range of different applications and pre-built websites, such as our user registration system, CSS menu generator, site search, digital goods for PayPal, comment systems, billing systems, contact forms, and much more. We also offer a range of pre-built websites, including our e-commerce websites, our social network, content management, file upload, property listings, much more. And of course, if you would like to get in touch with us for any matter, if you would like custom web design or inquire about a project you're interested in, then please use the contact form on our website or any of our other websites, and we would be more than happy to get back to you.